Aloha, welcome back to our final presentation of the year for Pacifica Transmissions. My name is Kiki. I am on script and I will be your host for today's transmission. In addition to being a fellow Pacifica Transmission artist, I also serve as a community health worker leading initiatives for empowering Pacific Islander communities, also known as EPIC, who were the SoCal Pacific Islander COVID response team, and a lot of many other CBOs in California are working very hard to educate our communities about COVID-19 best practices, getting us to immunity, which, as you can see, one of the benefits of being vaccinated and immunized is sharing space with your family and friends. That's you. Speaking of space, our transmission home space and base is here in Long Beach, California, where we acknowledge the Tongva people as the original stewards of this land. I invite you to use the chat and tell us where you're dialing in from and acknowledge the stewards of the land where you live. Who do you bring with you today? And if you can, and if you have the ability to, drop photos in the chat, because this is a special transmission. As is our mission, a Pacifica transmission is our way of enhancing cultural competency and showcasing the vibrant talents and histories of the indigenous artists of our community. Each artist is invited to the Pacific Island Ethnic Art Museum, also known as PIAM, to be paired with ancestor pieces from the museum's archive. This is an incredible gift to us Pacific Islanders living very far from home, because PIAM is the only museum in the contiguous United States, that's the continent part, with a mission to amplify the collective wisdom of the people of Pacific Islands of Oceania. It is also a collection by our community. Many sacred objects come from families who have either donated or stored their objects here at PIAM through the years. So go ahead and find PIAM on Instagram. Their handle is at PIEAM_arts. Of course, this couldn't happen without the generous support of the Robert Gumbiner Foundation and the Roomba Foundation of Long Beach. Mahalo, mahalo, mahalo. We're also going to give a special shout out. Our auntie and director of PIAM, Auntie Fran, is...
Yeah.
There she is, Auntie Fran, who is the steward of this home and incredible collection. Mahalo, Auntie.
Mahalo.
Now, I have the honor of introducing my darling, a sister, friend, co-conspirator, hostess of With the Moses, Mariquita Micki Davis, who's a Chamoru multimedia artist and educator living in Los Angeles. She is the co-curator and producer of this Pacifica Transmissions. She's also the mentor and programmer for visual communications and the Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival. Welcome, Mariquita.
We, as you might notice, the applause, because there's a lot of it. We have a live audience today, so this is another one of the perks of vaccinated and in this space with everyone, and a lot of our Pacifica Transmission artists. It's a blessing. So, Sizus Maasi for being on the other side of this, yeah, and thanks for having me. As is only appropriate, I wanted to give a context, talk about the ancestor that I work with, which is the Åcho Atupat, the Chamoru slingstone. This slingstone right here is making a debut on the feed. It's a very special stone. Found its way to PIAM through the delegation of the Guam Museum. Is that about 10 years ago, Auntie Fran, right? So 10 years ago, the delegation came out. This is before the Guam Museum had their most recent building which is what you would see today on island. And the delegation presented the stone to Auntie Fran because they found out that when they learned that she was Chamoru, they handed her the stone, which I feel like is a very key aspect of the gift giving through the hand to another Chamoru, to keep the stone safe and elevate its story. The Atupat is traditionally, our ancestors used it for, I think mostly warfare, but it was used for hunting. And it takes the shape in a kind of almond shape. There are other forms, I think, the diamond shape and round, but the ones that you typically see have the almond shape. And it's also in the seal on our flag, the point to point. They can be made of limestone, basalt, and hardened and fired clay. And there has been a bit of a revival, from what I could see. A lot of young Chamoru who are taking up the Åcho Atupat, creating slings and going out in groups and doing this activity and really reviving this activity. But it's not uncommon to go for a hike or boonie stomping in the Halamtano of the jungle and find them resting on our lands. And so it was a huge honor to be paired with us by Auntie Fran.
Thank you for sharing that. Now let's move on to the first day of your transmission. I was here for your first day, and I remember you picking me up, and your energy was very different that day. It was almost as if you started off just clean slate, very light, very, I don't know, you just had this really light energy about you that day. And so if you can tell a little bit about your experience, how were you feeling? What was that internal experience like for you? And then when you stepped into the space and your first meeting with your ancestor.
Internal. I was extremely, I think we all have a bit of like nervousness because we feel the weight of this responsibility to be communicating with such a special ancestor. And I went upstairs with Auntie Fran, and we've just been having a conversation about the way we use our words and the power of words. And I thought to myself that this is going to be a real exercise in speaking and communicating. I have to be open and receptive. So I wanted the stone to know, Åcho Atupat, to know that I was listening with my entire body, my mind, my head, my heart, my skin, my breath, my ears. And that I knew that even though it was, it's a very small object, but I just knew that it held so much power, the power to be able, with precision to take down a bird or unfortunately a foe. So I let it know that I see that power and I'm just ready to receive. And so I gently took the stone and I started to put it under my nose and sniff it. I laid down, I put it on my ear, I put it on my chest, I put it on my throat, I put it on my head. I wanted to build that relationship in the best way that I knew how, which is body, through my breath. And when I came down, so I received this message, "Will you catch me?" was one that came through very clear. And also, "I will show you my power if you make me a sling," which was like, I knew that I would be making a sling. I had plans to make it with my hair. But from that first initial meeting, I was like, oh, it's today. It's today. Very clearly what I got. And I was a bit like, okay, you asked for this. And so what do you do? So I think I immediately came down and and gave my hair. I sacrificed my hair. So I have some pictures of that.
And so it just spoke right away. It wasn't a shy ancestor, is what I'm hearing.
You know, I sensed a timidity at first. It might have been my own, but then will you catch me was something that was in response to my question. And also the question of, if you make me a sling, I'll show you my power. And so are the two things that I set off. I took the response and I set off to make good on that. And so here, if you can see, so this is me preparing the hair right after the meeting. I'm brushing my hair. And I also had all these reservations. I was like, I haven't brushed my hair or haven't washed my hair, but this is what feels right. And later I would realize that with the hair, the oils, it helped to braid the hair. Again, preparing, somewhat letting my hands, I also felt like this was a real time of trust, to trust my body, to trust my hands. I don't know how to make a sling. I don't even know, this is a ceremony that I think was happening, and I was guided by the ancestors. And so you just have to do it with the clearest and the biggest heart I think you can, and just the most respectful way possible. So just let them guide my hands. Just so you can see the length of my hair. And then, quite coincidental, but I think it made so much sense. Who was in the space that day? We're all Chamoru, young Chamoru from different generation. And so here is Samantha, who has been coming and volunteering in our space. And I asked her if she would do me the honor and to cut the hair, that I couldn't see myself. So also like looking to that generation to say that I trust you to take scissors and do this with me, do this ceremony. You have that ability. And of course, Rowdy, who's another Pacifica transmission artist, and Payam's steward, he just, so he was here, and also entrusting him to be a part of this ceremony. And these are just a few, I wanted to show just a couple, this is a photo that Alfred took, but just a visual of, even though this was after the first encounter, but what that looked like to lay the Åcho Atupat on my eyes.
What a special gift, it was such a gift to be there and witness it. And it was a gift to, just see you gifting your hair and to be in ceremony with the ancestor piece, and a gift from them too, that allowed us to participate in that.
Absolutely. It was so appropriate to see our community, because Kiki was there, JP was there, Auntie Fran, and everybody was so present and participate, whether you had the role of witnessing or documenting, everybody just really spoke to our solidarity of our community.
Our little family. Holding space for family, which is something that you've been, that's been part of the communication in your transmission, right? This family feeling. I don't know, maybe you can describe a little bit better.
Of our oceanic family?
Well, the oceanic family, your Pacifica Transmissions family, the involvement of your own family, having a part in this transmission as well.
Yes. So kinship goes, beyond just our immediate nuclear family. It extends, into, lineages that our ancestors see, and so we always, we extend, through our, Austronesian and Micronesian ancestry through to Polynesian, Melanesian. It's just, I value that kinship.
It's called One Sawa.
One's
One Ocean.
Oh.
I'm butchering the pronunciation, but anyway, you have a video to show us.
I do. And yes, I have. So through this past month, my main language is the digital arts, video, photography, light. And so I only thought it would be appropriate to use the languages that I'm in tune with to speak through this process to the Åcho Atupat. And so just trying to see if there's any context. We'll watch the video and then we can talk more.
Malago Åcho Atupat. Malago Åcho Atupat. Malago Åcho Atupat.
That was beautiful, Micki. It was such a beautiful and sacred and I can hear myself.
I'm turning it off now.
Thank you. A ritual that took place, an intimate ritual that took place between two Chamorro people, 3 generations, right? If we count the ancestor piece as well. I know that you had mentioned some reverberations during that day that you and you both had went through that ceremony with Alfred. I was wondering, can you tell us a little bit more about that ceremony and what you felt?
The feeling, yes. So there's a little backstory too to this. So after the hair ceremony, and I'll come to this, I was still trying to build that relationship physically with the stone, and I felt like, if you notice in the video, there's air, like I'm trying to create with the wind, because I had that sense that there was a need for that, and so, but I don't know how to use a sling, so I was trying at first to do things just with myself and the stone, playing like a game of catch, like this. And then Auntie Fran brought a sling from her personal collection. And I knew that I didn't want to let it catch too much air. Maybe that was the thing, is that I was trying to work against its wishes. But I also didn't know how to use the sling. So I watched tutorials and I would cradle it in the sling and just kind of, as rocking a child. But what happened is, during one of these rocks, and I had watched this tutorial and I knew that I was trying to do something very low, but Åcho Atupat flung, it popped up. I was in Payam's yard and it actually went out into the street. And it was terrifying to do something like that, because the way everything that we just been through, and just, and so, but I just, on my feet, out the door, putting on the shoes, into the street, and I grabbed the stone. It was hot from the road. When I came inside, the first thing I had to do was apologize, but also take it to water to wash it off. And when I did, I washed it with this water treated with aqua amore, and it's treated with sound.
We call it angel water.
We call it angel water.
Blessed by the angels.
And so, but as soon as the water touched the stone, I've never felt that. It was almost like electricity shot through my hand and up my arm. And I thought so I was receiving that. And I also felt like I was kind of being laughed at. It was laughing at me. But I remembered that, and even my mom's laughing at this, because if you think of Chamorro ancestors and the way that we cassie and tease each other, it was kind of like, what are you going to do now? Are you going to put me away? And so I said, okay, but I'm doing this. There's something I'm receiving them. I might not be interpreting the message correctly, which I think is probably that happens, I think. And so for those that are, trying to, tune in and, and develop that skill of deep ancestral listening, you might mistake things and you might get them just cross. But I decided to keep going, and I feel like that's also the message that the stone was saying, is like, you have to keep persistent, and you have to keep listening. And so what I realized through Auntie Fran, you, Eseal, and your guidance, and also the stone, is that it wasn't about catching, it was about releasing and receiving. It was about reciprocity, about not just me, stone. It was about the power within me that we all have, or that one would have, communicating, and that it's not just me in this. And so that's bringing Alfred in, the younger, other generations in. and having that experience. And on this day, when it was kind of like the closing and it was the final shoot, I felt that same electricity in my body. So it started in the hand, which I thought was very insightful. It starts with the hand. The stone is almost like, I'm handing this to you, you all have this energy. And then when you, I guess, act or initiate it maybe appropriately, then it said, see, it lives in you too.
Mm.
And so the same electricity that I felt in my hand was in my body
Probably to Alfred.
and passed on to, I believe so. I really do.
Talk about rock and roll. So Micki, thank you so much for sharing that story. What do you think, the stone's message is for the audience?
I have this, I know what this is. There is power and beauty in the minuscule.
Mm.
If you let yourself look, you will find your stone.
Wow. Yeah, thank you. That's very powerful. Well, I think that's about all the time we have, but I do want to end in a final question because this is the last Pacifica transmissions for this year. Hopefully we can continue again. We don't know how this will look, but the life of transmissions will continue. So what is your hope for this program?
Transmissions continues in some form. We adapted or listened to a global call of pause, the pandemic, and finding other paths of connection. So now the conditions are shifting again. And I just believe that turning to our artists, Indigenous artists, Pacifica artists, can offer hope, healing, and even solutions for living in this future. That's my hope.
Beautiful. Well, mahalo nui oi.
This is Masi.
Thank you for joining us. There's whispering going on. Oh no. I'm not comfortable. How about we
I will for the ancestors, in lieu of Osaina, I will close us out with the Nyani Hamzu, which is a chant. Actually get the permission. We're having a miscommunication.
Oh, wow. I am being asked something that I was not prepared for. And I'm not sure. Okay. I have to think, well, just as a mahalo to you and the mahalo to our ancestors, we offer my mahalo in the form of an oli backed up by the sirens of Long Beach. I haven't done this oli in a while, so please bear with me. Uhola ia ka makaloala, uai ke alohala, kuka ia ka haloala, pavehi mai na lehua, mai ko ho'oku ia ka halavaila, mahalo e na akua, mahalo e ala ea, mahalo me ke alohala, mahalo me ke alohala, mahalo.
Hosai namigai mahasi. Hosai namigai mahasi. Ho manya sai namigai mahasi. Oh, manya saina migai mahasi, migai mahasi, migai mahasi.
All right. Mahalo, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.